You're listening to the Huddle Up Podcast with Chad Jensen and Zack Kelberman. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com and sound off. And now it's time to drop some knowledge.
Okay, we're live, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment while we bring on our awesome Facebook community here. Bear with us just one moment. I'm going to set my phone up so I got the game, see what's going on in the AFC Super Wild Card. All right, welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up Podcast, presented, as always, by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, as always, my partner in crime. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, you were just talking about the rumors going around right before we went live. There's a little rumor going around that the combine, something about the combine being nixed, something about pro days. What have you heard?
I saw someone that retweeted a rumor going around. I think it was an agent for one of the prospects or someone that works in the scouting departments in college of the NFL that there's no pro days this year or no combine due to the CV. That's the ongoing, the pandemic going on. That would be unfortunate, Chad, because we had our own plans and we had the staff members' plans for the Senior Bowl and stuff like that. It'd be unfortunate, but could be another off season full of Zoom meetings and press conferences virtually.
I'm just so sick of that. I'm so over this new normal. I mean, let's get back to real life. Let's get those vaccines out there and get people, inoculated and safe and sound. But yeah, that would be a blow because we do have some plans. I don't want to spoil it quite yet what we have planned because there's, for all we know, everything's still on. But long story short, we had some big plans for the Senior Bowl. We had some big plans for the Combine and the draft. So we'll see how that shakes out. But Zack, the big kind of bombshell today, if you will, that really the lead story on milehighhuddle.com all day long is that New England Patriots assistant personnel guy, Dave Ziegler, ended up saying thanks but no thanks. He did I want to say, I can pull up the tweet from Kliss, but it was a 2.5+ hour interview on Saturday, and then he backed out. Bill
Thank
Belichick
God.
stepped in. Nick Caserio, getting the job, of course, to be the new GM in Houston, was his boss, so to speak, in New England. And so Belichick stepped in, probably sweetened the pot, said, hey, maybe some promises about a promotion, some increase in pay. So he got on the phone, Ziegler, called Joe Ellis, not John Elway, per Mike Kliss, called Joe Ellis, said, thanks, but no thanks. I have to formally withdraw my name. What was your reaction to that?
Thank God. Thank you, Bill Belichick, for doing that. It saved the Broncos from going through what would have been a waste of time because Ziegler was the worst candidate, Chad, of the 5, and that's including Brian Stark, their own in-house candidate as well. I want no one that came from New England, considering the players they've signed in free agency, considering the players they drafted. Their roster, sans Tom Brady, Chad, is middle of the pack. It really is average. I don't like the job that Bill Belichick has done either, for that matter, as GM. The last disciple, I mentioned this on anyone who hasn't tuned in or doesn't know about it yet on Kelberman's Corner today. I said the same thing about Belichick or the Patriots. The last time they hired someone from that tree was Josh McDaniels. So thanks, but no thanks. Thank you for backing out, Dave. You did us a solid.
No doubt. And by the way, shout out to everybody, all of our Facebook supporters who were there for the debut episode of Kelberman's Corner today with Zack and Kim Becker.
Thank
it
you,
was
guys.
a little bit delayed, Zack, because we were trying to iron out the kinks, figure out how to stream only to the supporters on Facebook, which delayed us about a few minutes, but we ended up getting her done, and it was great. In fact, I thought, you know what, this is a good conversation starter too. We're only 3 minutes in. We got to get to some matters of business here in just a moment, but I'm going to play a clip real quick from today's Kelberman's Corner, the debut episode, and this is a show that's going to be every single week on Sunday, noon Mountain Time, with Zack, obviously, and Kim Becker. And the cliff notes is hot takes, right? You get Zack dropping some hot takes, but they're hot takes that hold water, and you have Kim hosting. So let me play this real quick. Hopefully this works out okay. Let me play a little clip real quick. It's only a few seconds.
You talk about Champ Kelly, who is the presumed favorite right now. And I understand he has skin in the game. I understand he has great player interaction. I understand he worked for the Broncos in a previous capacity. You talk about young quarterbacks, though. This is the guy who's part of the contingent, Kim, who chose to pass on not only Patrick Mahomes, which is a fireable offense in itself, but also Deshaun Watson, all for Mitchell Trubisky, who they traded up a spot to draft at number 2 overall. And I'm not indemnifying Champ Kelly on that one move alone, but is this the guy, when you're trying to mold a young quarterback in Drew Lock, who showed a lot of progress in the second half of the season, especially in the finale? That was arguably his best game in a Broncos uniform. You want to bring in a guy who not only drafted Trubisky, but also advocated for the acquisition of Nick Foles.
So it was good, man. And I think, by the way, anyone who wants to get in on that, we're just getting started on what we're going to be doing with this content that is, really set aside for the Facebook supporters, because we spend so much time on YouTube. We're also going to start spending a lot more time on Facebook and cultivating new ways to create content there. Kelberman's Corner, we got a bunch of ideas and shows that are rolling out here in the next couple of weeks for our Facebook supporters. So even if you watch the show on YouTube or Periscope or Twitch, or you listen after the fact on Apple Podcasts or whatever, you're going to want to head on over to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Go to our Facebook page. You see the big blue button that says Become a Supporter. Click that. You're in like Flynn, and then you can watch. You can be there live for all the streams, or even if you can't make a live stream, you can access that at your convenience. But Zach, the notion that Champ Kelly should be painted with the same stripes as Ryan Pace or the GM in Chicago, who did make that fateful decision to take Mitch Trubisky instead of Deshaun Watson, instead of Patrick Mahomes, who were drafted later on in that class. There are some people that don't like that. They don't want to hear that, because I get it. We don't know exactly all the power plays and all the power decisions that were made. Which guys were the impetus for that decision? But, he was in that locker or that front office when that unfortunately fateful decision was made.
Well, I mean, he's the scouting exec. That's his job, is to identify the talent in the draft that best fits the team. And Ryan Pace, is it fair to say he didn't make the move, but he might have signed off on the move? He might have greenlighted the move as the GM of the team. I'm not, like I said in the clip, I'm not solely blaming Champ Kelly for passing on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. They weren't the only team that did. But it's the series of other moves. You look at the recent draft classes. I mentioned this on the show today. Their top pick last year in the second round, they didn't have a first-round pick, was a tight end. They drafted Trubisky number 2 overall. He didn't work out. Instead of developing another young quarterback, they went with Nick Foles, a retread. So it's just maybe not solely his fault, but it's the line of thinking from which the organization that he came from. And I don't want that type of mindset in Dove Valley. I don't want someone that's going to be like Vance Joseph, that takes his orders through Elway or through Joe Ellis and makes moves that appease maybe the personalities, but not necessarily the talent on the team. I want a guy who's has an eye for talent acquisition. And we saw that today. Well, I didn't realize necessarily, I wasn't focused on, it was Champ Kelly versus Terry Fontenot. The Bears versus the Saints today. Look at the final score. Look at this game. What did Trubisky do? Nothing. What did his high prize acquisition do in the Bears? Nothing. What did Khalil Mack do to impact this game they give up first round picks for? He was also in on that. He also handles free agency decisions. And look at the Saints roster, Chad. They are loaded every single year, and that Saints roster beat a pretty good Bears team today. It's case closed. It's Terry Fontenot as a top candidate. It's not really close. And then George Payton, and then really everybody else, including Champ Kelly.
For me, I'm with you on a lot of that stuff. In terms of the order, I'm still pining for Terry Fontenot. And by the way, we had to research that and figure it out. It's not Fontenot. It's French name. It's Fontenot. All right. But my thought process has kind of evolved on this. I want Fontenot. And it's honestly a tie for me in terms of George Payton or Champ Kelly. And I'll tell you why. Even though Payton, his front office, his personnel department, has a better recent track record in the draft and with pro personnel. But I love what Champ Kelly brings to the table just in terms of his story, his ability to connect with people and with players, and just being a professional people watcher. There was this article, gosh dang it, I can't remember now who the author was, but by The Athletic. Zach, you've read it, I've read it. Phenomenal insight into the path Kelly had to his job in the NFL. So I could live with it. I'm not going to go boo-hooing or crying if Champ Kelly ends up being the hire, because, let's face it, the Bears just got 86th from the playoffs. Kelly could start tomorrow.
Right, but
that's a little hyperbolic, but Terry Fontenot, for example, he can't leave the job to take the job. You can't leave the Saints to take the job till the Saints get bounced from the playoffs, because he's in charge. The season's still going for them, and he's in charge, Zach, of doing the I forgot the phrase now, but the advanced scouting. That's what it is. So scouting the next opponent, and that's a big role.
Yeah, but my personal philosophy is if you have the man, if you're convicted enough and you have the guy, you wait for him, Chad, no matter what it takes. If you have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you have the guy. They can have some wink underneath the table deal. It happens all the time, Chad. If they want him, they might move on to Champ Kelly because of that, but is it merit based? Is he getting hired based on what he can bring to the Broncos roster and make them a better team? You talk about his personality and his people skills. That's probably his strongest asset. But that's, to me, his only selling point. And everyone always references that, the Athletic article and his past and the adversity he's overcome. And I respect all of that. But I want someone that's going to bring talent to this team. I want someone that's going to make them a playoff contender again, immediately. And what have the Saints been every single year? Not only playoff, but Super Bowl contenders with the most loaded roster in the entire NFL for my money's worth. And you look at the Bears roster, you look who he's working with, Ryan Pace and Nagy. You look at who Fontenot's working with is Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis. So to me, it's just the scales are very much tipped.
Guys, we got so much to get to, including I see a lot of super chats stacked up. We're going to get to each and every one of your supers here in just a second. Any topics, any questions that are on your mind. But first, we got to take care of a few matters of business, starting with the sponsor of tonight's live stream pod, sportsbetting.com. As you know, gambling is now legal in the state of Colorado. And if you're looking to make watching your favorite sports a little more interesting, sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer destination. Here's why. You get the sharp odds, low juice. They have their own in-house bookmakers, which means they're not reaching outside of their own company to find odds and whatnot. That results in reduced juice and better prices. Hassle-free bonuses, which you can roll over after one time instead of some of the other competitors out there in this industry that make you have to bet it up to 5 to 30 times. Plus, you get 24/7 live customer support, and it's always a real person in the United States. But the kicker is this. Right now, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will match it up to $750. That's $750 in free bet credits. Plus, right now, you got the NBA tipping off, and you'll also get $25 in free NBA bet credits. And this $750 free credit match, I guess we can call it, it's going away here in the next couple of days. So you want to jump on this now. Head on over to sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle, sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. Capitalize on that $750 in free bet credits and start this year off on the right foot. All right, couple other quick things here, and we'll dive right back into the stream and the topics and the content for today. Social media, guys. It's been really cool to see how MHH and this podcast has grown just over the last 18 months. I mean, exponential growth. We always want to make sure that our audience who's listening and watching knows how to connect with us on social media to keep the conversation going. First and foremost, on Twitter, follow the podcast account at HuddleUpPod and the main account at Mile High Huddle. If you have those two accounts followed, you're not going to miss anything as it relates podcast, programming, announcements, giveaways, things like that, or breaking Broncos news and analysis. My partner, Zack Kelberman, on Twitter at Kelberman NFL, myself at Chad and Jensen. And then also, guys, a gentle reminder to head on over to the merch store. Get your swag on. Get yourself a hat, huddleuppod.com. Get a hoodie, a face mask, a T-shirt, a little something for everybody. Another way to support what we're doing here. And also, just, again, if you want to become a supporter, get access to the Kelberman's Corner. That's every Sunday with Zach and Kim. There's the link right there, facebook.com/milehighhuddle. It's a big blue button. You're in like Flynn. And if you're watching now on Facebook, you scroll to the bottom where you comment. There's a little green button there. You click on that, and it'll take you right where you need to go to become a supporter. We appreciate you considering that. And if you're not in a position to patronize the merch store, be a superstar on Super Chat, or become a supporter, it's all good. We're just happy to have you here. We're grateful to have you with us. We do ask, though, these three things. Number one, that you subscribe, crucial on YouTube and Apple and any of the podcast platforms. Number two, like this video, crucial on YouTube, crucial on Facebook. And the last thing, three, is the litmus test. If we're doing a good job for you, share this video out there. Help us continue to grow and reach new like-minded Broncos fans just like you.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Zach, this is about to get out of control with the chat, and we don't have John with us. He's off 2 more days. He'll be back Tuesday. So for us, he'll be back, I guess, Wednesday, right, with you and I. But he'll be back on the job Tuesday. So we still got to juggle a few balls. It's just Zach and I tonight in terms of managing the chat and the back end. So appreciate you guys. But Kenneth has a little bit of a different tact he wants to take. I think most people, their minds are on GM, their minds are on what's going on with that, maybe some draft. But let's just tackle this real quick. Appreciate you, Kenneth. By the way, your mug on the way, my friend. So let me know when you get that. Shoot me a DM, shoot me an email. Appreciate you. He says, top 3 Broncos that could play well in any era. Man, that's a long list. And I'd have to give it some real thought. But, I mean, John Elway could play in any era, in my opinion. John Elway, I'd probably throw in
TD.
Yeah, I do think TD could play in any era. That's good. And probably
I was thinking Vaughn, too.
Yes. Let's stick with Vaughn. I'm going to go Elway. You know what? I'm going to go Elway, Champ, Vaughn. What's your top 3?
That's what I was thinking. I mean, they've had so many great players throughout their history. You know, Floyd Little, you know, obviously, you know, God rest his soul. All the great receivers, you know, all the great running backs they've had, Chad. You know, the corner, Champ Bailey can play in any era. They've had so many good players in Denver. But yeah, I think the first 2 that came to mind for me was Elway, of course, TD, because the football started out as a running sport, obviously. It evolved to a passing sport. And then, can you imagine Von Miller in the 1940s NFL? Just wrecking quarterbacks with leather helmets on. It'd be great. So, yeah, those are my 3.
We have a very generous super from the queen of MHH jumping in off the top rope as she so often does. And
Thank you.
We appreciate you so much, Christy. It means a lot to us. Hope you know that. And hope you're having a great start to your new year. She says, I'm hoping for Fontenot. Zach has me sold on him. By the way, good show today on Facebook. It's going to be a hit. Thank you guys. Always the best. Really appreciate that, Christy. It was so cool to see so many of our supporters on YouTube and many different platforms funnel over to Facebook and become a supporter, to be in on that. And the community we have, Zach, is just second to none.
Yeah, and Christy's, you know, not just, you know, the donation, that's great and all, but your support day in and day out, watching the shows, tuning into all the programming, keeping up with it, and obviously, you know, listening to my takes on Terry Fontenot. I appreciate it all, seriously. No BS. It's so touching, and I'm so grateful. We're both so grateful. Thank you so much, Christy. Bottom of my heart, we love you so much.
Appreciate you. Here's one also from Hunter. Good to see you, Hunter. It's been a minute since we've seen Hunter Wartan in the stream. So thank you for the support, my friend, and welcome back. He says, what's up, guys? Sorry I can't be in here as much as I used to be. I recently moved, and I'm still getting used to stuff. Keep up the great work. It's all good, my friend. We understand life happens. Life sometimes gets in the way, and we're just happy to have you with us now, my friend, and your support really means a lot to us.
Yes. Thank you, Hunter.
We got one here from Christian down in Vegas. Our professional lifeguard. Sorry, Christian, I can't show your super because the chat is really active tonight and it jumped in. I don't have John, so we can't go back and grab it. But Christian, appreciate you, my friend. He says, do you think George Paton is the most likely to get the GM job over Kelly? Who's the leader in the clubhouse for you right now, Zach, based on everything we've heard, the lay of the land, the way things are kind of coming together?
Based on what I've heard, actually, Peyton is the leader in the clubhouse, barring how the interviews have went over the weekend and all the information's not obviously real time. And I'm so happy with that. Obviously, I want Fontenot. I'd be over the moon, though, with George Paton, who's almost equally as qualified, even though the organization he's worked for hasn't been as successful as New Orleans. But his resume, Chad, is spot on. His eye for talent, spot on. He's who I think is the leader, and he's my 1B to Fontenot's 1A. If it's not Kelly, I think it's going to be Paton.
Appreciate all of you giving us some feedback on how the debut episode of Kelberman's Corner shook out. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
You know, it's interesting, Zach, because George Paton kind of put out a power move, right? He was in the running for the Panthers job, the GM gig, and he ended up, just like Dave Ziegler did, picking up the phone and calling Joe Ellis. He did the same with the Panthers to really kind of signal to the Denver Broncos that I want this job. This is the job that is most important to me.
And what's so impressive to me is the fact he's turned down countless interviews over the last, 5-7 years with better organizations where the Broncos are right now in terms of winning. So it says a lot. It speaks to how The people who know football, Chad, not just the ones who have hot takes, not just the ones who act impulsively and emotionally, the ones who act logically and look at the Broncos roster inside to out. They realize what the organization is right now, which is not as bad as people paint them to be, and they know what it could be as soon as 2021 with the horses they do possess.
Dylan jumping in. Good to see you, brother. Longtime listener, bona fide superstar. This is a MHH Mount Rushmore superstar right here. Good to see you, my brother. He says, glad to be back watching live more consistently. Been harder to stay connected with how this past year and season have gone. MHH for life. We appreciate you, Dylan. And look, we understand, man. Again, sometimes life happens. Life gets in the way. And, what's important is that we stick together. You find your way back and we're all under the same roof. So good to have you here, Dylan. We appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, we know S happens. We know life happens, and it's all good. Happens to the best of us. We appreciate you tuning in, though, Dylan, whenever you can.
We got John Houston jumping in. Good to see you, John. A guy that whenever I see him in the stream, he's showing love and support on Super Chat. So appreciate you, John. He says, people don't realize Bill Belichick is not a great GM. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's up for debate. I think there was a time when he did much better in the draft. But here's what I'll say. Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, Zach, they have a very, very choppy record in the premium rounds. In rounds 1, 2, and 3, they've got a lot of misses. And I'm not really inclined at this moment, especially with Ziegler backing out, to pull up their draft history and show everybody to kind of illustrate. But he does have a point.
I mean, remember all the receivers they've busted for them, Chad Jackson, all those guys over the years. And now it's N'Keal Harry. I can never remember his first name.
That's
N'Keal.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah, and it's just they really do have a bad track record in the first couple rounds. And you can argue maybe I hated the Cam Newton signing. I thought it wasn't going to last because he's a broken down quarterback. And the Broncos learn with Flacco, when you sign that quarterback, no matter how good they look in the summer, they fall apart by the winter. So if that falls on Belichick, bad move there. You can argue without Tom Brady, Chad, how effective is he? Real quick, we saw him in Cleveland, or we didn't see him, but not many people know this, before he was with New England, he was a head coach in Cleveland. And they weren't that good. So, you can wonder now, the chicken or the egg, was it Brady or Belichick? I think it's pointing to the former.
I'll be honest with you. For the longest time, my thought was that Brady was more served by Bill Belichick, the coach and the personnel guy.
Right.
But as we've gotten farther into this season, the more it's really felt like it's the other way around. Let's grab here. Fat Cat's jumping in. Good to see you, my friend. Really appreciate you. And by the way, Cleveland is up already 14-0 on the Steelers. So
coaching. They don't even have their head coach tonight. He's out because of CV, and they're beating the Pittsburgh. It just goes to show you, no matter offseason reps or whatever, if you have the proper system in place, you can win no matter what. I'm happy for the Browns, though, Chad.
Now it's 21. And now it's 21. Wow. They just scored. Goodness gracious.
Wow,
all right, so
good for them.
Yeah, that's kind of the emotional teams I'm rooting for this year. I'm always going to, when the Broncos are out, I'm always going to keep it AFC, because I lived through the 13, 14-year string of dominance where the NFC the real championship game in the NFL was the NFC title game. Whoever won that game was going to win the league. And I lived through that, suffered through that. So even when the Broncos are bounced, I still root for AFC, and I'm going Browns or Bills at this stage.
Same. Yeah. Bills, Colts gave them a run for their money. What a well-coached team the Colts are as well. But if the Bills play like that against the Chiefs, real quick, Chad, I know we're kind of really derailing this question right now. They play like that against the Chiefs are going to walk, handily through that game.
Fat Cats, again, thanks, buddy. He says, best case scenario, the new GM comes in and sticks with Luck. Who's the best corner or inside linebacker that falls to 9 that we can grab and make part of the new Broncos? Great question. And by the way, your premise about Locke being the best option, right now I'm inclined to agree with you. As I've said, really, ever since the Broncos started 0-3, I've said, I think Drew needs one more year. That kind of shifted when John Elway, relinquished GM duties and fired himself to take an elevated role. I mean, look, when it's Belichick when it's Ziegler calling Ellis, not John Elway, I think that kind of tells you, that kind of exposes what really happened there in terms of John Elway taking that position. But nevertheless, Zach, the top option in the draft when it comes to corner or inside linebacker, to me, the dream scenarios would be Micah Parsons, which I'm really doubtful he's going to be there at 9.
Could be.
What's the kid's name? I'm having a brain fart, dude. The corner.
Farley,
thank you. That would be the dream, but how likely is that to happen? We'll see. But it could either be Farley or it could be Patrick Surtain Jr. We'll see. As we inch a little closer to the draft.
Or it could be Zavin Collins, who's a real dark horse, if not Parsons at 9, for an inside linebacker with a little more pass rushing prowess. Collins could be the answer there as well. They could move down a few spots. We really can't answer this question, though, without knowing who the new GM is going to be and kind of look at their draft history to formulate our best guesstimate.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Next up here, we have Boise Man. Good to see you, my friend. He says, NFL finds a way to navigate the pandemic and play the season, but can't figure out how to do the combine in a bubble. Yeah, it's interesting because I think in a worst case kind of contingency, Zach, you would think that maybe schools ultimately opt not to hold pro days that are open to scouting departments across the fruited plain and media, but they still hold a pro day in which they somehow, put a little money into making sure it's all captured well on video that they can submit to all 32 teams. And with regard to the combine, there's still a way to do that, even though it would hurt guys like you and I. Yeah. You can still hold the combine, make sure that players, they have a couple of week process or whatever to go through all the checks to make sure that they aren't carrying the bug. And then it's only TV. Maybe it's only TV that's there because anyone that's ever covered the combine, when you get there, you think, I think a lot of fans just assume that you're chilling in Lucas Oil Stadium. That's not how it shakes out. That's only for TV and NFL personnel. What you're actually doing, if you're covering the combine, is right across the street.
It's a convention center.
And that's where everything happens, all the interviews, all the podiums, all the weightlifting, all the meetings that they have individually with players. It all happens over there. So maybe that side of things, Zach, gets 86, and you just keep it focused on what happens at Lucas Oil Stadium on the field. But I think where there's a will, there's a way. His point is very valid. The NFL found a way to do it. It can be done.
And it's unfortunate because we were talking about where everything's located, the stadium and the convention center. It's in downtown Indianapolis, and I'm not seeing that flashy off the bat, but Chad, it's actually a really nice downtown district, a lot to do there. And selfishly, I liked going. I mean, I would love to go back. I really love covering the combine. I love the experience, and I'd want it to be the real deal. I'm still holding out hope, though. It was just a rumor. Nothing has been set in stone yet. I think how the Senior Bowl is going to go later this month could dictate how the combine's going to go and how pro days are going to go. If it's virtual, it's virtual, but I would like the sense of normalcy to maintain this offseason.
Jay Anderson brings up a fair point that I think we should discuss rationally here, and that is, how do you know Champ Kelly did not like Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson better? He did not have the final say, though, which is true. He didn't have the ultimate power to make that decision, and that's a fair point. I guess what it comes down to is it's similar to, it's like a GM, all right? John Elway, let's just use John Elway as an example. You can criticize him for his failures in the draft, but at the same time, you have to compliment him for his successes, right? Especially turning the ship around those final three, 18, 19, 20, those final three draft classes that he handpicked. Anyone that was with Elway during that down period, or even these last 3 years, even though it was a good draft, the product on the field didn't shake out. The Matt Russells of the world, the Brian Starks, etc., they get painted with the same brush of whatever that GM did, because ultimately the GM, everyone's probably a little bit different in terms of just how hands-on they are in the scouting process, but they take their cues ultimately from the personnel guys and the scouts that they surround them with. And so even though it's true, Jay, that we can't ascertain or know for sure exactly where Champ Kelly stood on that quarterback issue in 2017, the fact remains that part of the reputation that Pace and the Bears have for that, it does kind of rub off on him.
I mean, you mentioned the influence, and why else are they hired? Why else are they there in the building, if not for their scouting? And again, this is going to become a pure black and white issue, and I don't mean, race. I mean, people see it one way or the other. I even preface it by saying some of it's on Ryan Pace, too. He had a hand in not taking Deshaun Watson, not taking Patrick Mahomes, but Champ Kelly was part of that contingent who had the decision-making power to influence that. And it wasn't just they passed on Watson, Chad. They didn't pay him one interview. They didn't give him one phone call. They weren't interested at all. They honed in on Trubisky among those prospects and then drafted up to get him. And I'll say this, okay, throw out the Deshaun Watson argument. Give me a selling point on Champ Kelly besides his personality, besides his people skills? What's the selling point? I can give you some on Fontenot. I can give you some on George Payton. Sell me on Champ Kelly.
For what it's worth, the Big Ben is melting down. Like, they just took the ball away. The Browns did.
He shot too.
They're in the red zone, and they're either going to be 24-0 or 28-0 here in the short term. Boise man jumping in again. Thank you, my friend. And some congratulations in order for him. He says, also, just had our third baby last night. Healthy little girl named Peyton. Wife wouldn't go for Peyton, number 18. You know what's funny about the way you spelled Peyton, all right? That's a name we considered for our daughter back in the day. And this was long before, not long, a couple years before Peyton Manning ever became a Bronco, because my daughter was born in 2010. And we ultimately went with the name Hayden, okay? But we didn't spell it Haden. We spelled it just like you're spelling here, with one difference at the beginning. Hai, well, two differences, I guess. Haidyn. So similar spelling, getting a little bit creative, but congrats on that, dude. That's awesome.
God bless Boise, man. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Our friend Chris, a.k.a. Blue Rock, jumping in on Super Chat. Really appreciate you. We hire Peyton Manning yet? Kidding, of course. Yeah, it was fun to kind of speculate and dream and think what it would be like if Peyton were to enter that, throw his hat in the ring, so to speak. But it was never even a serious consideration. And I think the reason why is Peyton Manning doesn't want to do it. And I don't just mean the Broncos job, but I don't think he's really interested at this stage in his life of becoming an exec. Maybe that changes down the road, but right now he's just not he hasn't put out the feelers, and he hasn't put out the message to all his contacts across the league that he's interested in that kind of a role.
That's what I was going to say. It's not just the Broncos he's turning down. We have not heard one rumbling over the course of the last 5 years since he's been retired that he wants to come back to being a GM. We've heard Senate runs. We've heard ownership rumors. We have heard nothing about GM. He's even turned down being a broadcaster for Monday Night Football for ESPN. $10 million a year, more than he would make as a GM, half of the work. He doesn't want to do a menial job like that. He wants ownership, or we don't know. Mystery.
Well, I'll tell you what. He does a good job making football content on ESPN Plus. I've been watching that show, Peyton's Places, and it's really, really well done. Mark, good to see you, my friend. Mark Langley in the hizzy. Man, talk about a Mount Rushmore superstar. Love you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. And give our best to the fam. He says, what's up, my guys and Broncos country? Really good to see you. Here's a point from Dylan, who throws in this. He says, who knew that Pat Mahomes would be as good as he is now? Obviously, it doesn't hurt to have a stellar offense and one of the best play callers, play designers at head coach. True on both counts. I don't think anyone, including the Chiefs, really had any inkling of just how good Patrick Mahomes was going to be in the league. But I'll tell you what, we got a little bit of a preview of Mahomes in that Week 17 finale in 2017, his rookie year. When the Chiefs started him against Paxton Lynch, it was his only start as a rookie. And even though he didn't put up crazy volume,
what a mismatch, looking back.
Definitely. But he didn't put up crazy stats because that defense actually played pretty well after Aqib Talib kind of mailed it in early, got grilled by the coaches. That defense kind of stiffened. It wasn't the Star Wars numbers that you see from Patrick Mahomes in every game since, basically, but he was good enough to put the game well in control. They bring in the backup, Tyler Bray, I want to say, and then Tyler Bray either loses the lead or he's close to losing the lead, and so they bring Mahomes in to close it down. That was unfortunately a harbinger of things to come for the Broncos because they still haven't beaten Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, once again, though, I mean, people get stuck in their own stances, and your guys are more than welcome to like Champ Kelly as a prospect, but I admitted this, that they weren't the only team, the Bears, that passed on Mahomes. A lot of teams did and passed on Watson, and they're all regretting it now. But they were among the contingent. That's the whole point I was making.
But honestly, I don't hate Chad. I almost said Chad Kelly. I don't hate Champ Kelly. Then I almost said Bailey. I like him a lot. He would be, it sounds kind of a little too dismissive or casual to say it this way, but I would be fine. I would be just fine if the Denver Broncos ultimately choose to go with Champ Kelly, but I still think right now there are better options on the table in the form of Peyton and Fontenot. WE jumping in. Appreciate you, my friend. Good to see you. Bonafide superstar. WE says, Kelly was the director of pro personnel, not scouting, was involved in getting Ward, Sanders, Talib Mack, talking about his time in Denver and DeMarcus Ware. Talking about his time in Denver. We can pull up his resume if we need to.
Yeah, his resume is the Bears hired him, though, as the director of pro scouting in 2015 before he got bumped to his current position. So, yes, he had a hand in scouting for the Bears, and look at their draft history. And he also still has a role in that, even though he was elevated, just like Elway will, secretly behind closed doors. I'm sure he'll advise the new GM or give his input as well. I mean, it's a little naive to think that once he got a new position, he stopped doing scouting. He was always involved in that.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, if it's pro, then they're focused mostly on free agency, right? Or in NFL talent across the board. And even just today, for example, I was watching I'm doing my research on all these candidates. And I sat down and watched an interview with Terry Fontenot, right? Not Champ Kelly, but Terry Fontenot. And he was talking about his involvement in, even though he's a pro guy, right? He deals with the pro side, the free agents, the NFL talent. He was talking about his knowledge and insight and staying on top of what was going on with the college side, because as soon as those players enter the league, it becomes his purview. And so it's all one, there's directors. Every team kind of has their own different titles for these things, but there's the college personnel side, AKA draft. There's the pro side, AKA, free agency, NFL. And it's actually pretty incestuous, even though they specialize. We got Smith Corona jumping in. Good to see you, bro. Total superstar. He says, if establishing a winning culture is a job of the new GM, then give me Fontenot and what they do in New Orleans every single time. He's our favorite. But Zach, I hate to break anyone's heart here. Unfortunately, he is a front runner for the job in Atlanta.
Yeah.
He's one of 2 or 3 finalists for the job, according to Adam Schefter.
It's actually looking like he's not going to come to Denver, and that's unfortunate. He remains far and away. I mean, there's a sizable gap between him and Peyton, but it's looking like he's going to go to Atlanta, Chad, and the Broncos are honing in on Peyton or possibly as a fallback Champ Kelly, but obviously still holding out hope and crossing my fingers and my toes that Fontenot's the guy.
Okay, there's Christy. This one's the chat is being very active, and I love it. But without John here, we're swimming a little bit. Let's grab Mark, and then I'm going to have to go back in and grab some from the back end. But Mark Anthony, good to see you, my friend. Mark Anthony Ignacio, right? Same cat. I'm pretty sure that's the same profile pic we're used to seeing. Looks like he shortened his
with
handle.
a C.
Go ahead. Oh, yes, with a C. I got Fontenot number 1. Resume and education straight up amazing. Reports say Kelly is a player's GM and is aggressive. Did great work in Denver. Keep it up, MHH fam. Honestly, Zach, I'll tell you, I think at this stage the Broncos have really honed in. They're finalists for this. I don't think Brian Stark ultimately is going to be involved in the final decision in terms of being a real player for that courtesy. Maybe he comes in and blows them away in an interview, but this is a guy they see every day, right? And he's part of the old regime, and he'll stick around under the new hire and whatnot. So it comes down to Fontenot, Kelly, and Peyton, and any one of those guys I think would be an exciting option for the Denver Broncos. It's just a matter of, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, right? Most of them are good. I can't think of one off the top of my head anyway that I taste the ice cream. I go, oh, that's disgusting. I can't eat it. Might not be my favorite, but it's not bad. It's not going to kill you. In this case, it's far and above that. The Denver Broncos have zeroed in on 3 guys. But one thing, Zach, that people miss often is so many times when it comes to head coaching hires, when it comes to GM included, it very much is influenced by the playoffs because teams have their schedule. They need to get decisions made. It's like when I was at the Senior Bowl in 2015. All right. You think back to that year, and the Broncos had just fired John Fox, mutual dismissal, whatever. The Broncos fired John Fox. Okay. And they had just hired, it took a little time because Kubiak, he had his thing going on with the Baltimore Ravens as the OC there, but he had just been hired. And I want to say his, Senior Bowl week started, of course, on a Monday. I want to say that day he had his introductory press conference, but the Broncos really pushed it to the limit, Zach, because you had the Senior Bowl starting that week. And in fact, I didn't see a single Broncos scout, personnel, GM, anything there until Wednesday for that purpose. So that's one of the reasons why some of these decisions I wouldn't necessarily, Zach, say they get rushed, but that's part of the process. Sometimes you go, maybe if you're John Elway, you go, I think Fontenot's the best guy, but we can't afford to wait until as late as February to get him here.
Well, first of all, to the previous question, he's getting credit, Champ Kelly, for what he did in Denver, but wouldn't that have also been John Elway? I mean, people are saying that Mickey Loomis made all the great decisions for the Saints draft and it wasn't Terry Fontenot, but the same can work for Champ Kelly in reverse. And let me tell you something. If they follow that guideline to pick the next GM, they're making a mistake. This is a crossroads offseason for Denver, Chad. I mean, we're entering the end of the Elway and Ellis era. Matt Russell retired. They're losing their top 3 guys in the front office. They really have to pick the most qualified candidate based on merit, not because of the incestuous ties like you mentioned. That's why I'm worried in a sense that Kelly's going to get it based on that, not based on the fact of the best man for the job. When you stack them up, there's a sizable gap between Fontenot and Payton and then Kelly. It's what's so.
By the way, Zach, I'm going to grab Gio real quick, our superstar George. On your end, with wherever you're at in the chat, look and see if you can find Pobby's super. If not, I've got her put in here on the back end. But see if you've got her by chance. While you're looking, I'm going to grab one of our most dedicated, passionate superstars, George Vandermark. Really appreciate you, my brother. He's a Mount Rushmore guy, and he says, "Get yo swag on. Got my new hoodie today. Right on. Good to hear that, my friend." Very quick shipping. Hey, look at him selling for us. Love it, dude. Back to work tomorrow.
Checks in the mail.
Live on Sundays. Fontenot is my pick for GM, which, by the way, it's like, got to go back to work. You're like, I got to go back to work. But it's one of those things where, you count your blessings because we know the alternative. And those of you who know George at all or have been following him, even on the surface of what's happened over the last 6 months or so, he's been through the ringer. Due to, we'll just say the pandemic. So glad to hear that, my friend George, because it's a sign that things are on the up and up.
Yeah, and we have, cautious optimism for 2021 in every facet of our lives. So we're fortunate as you are, and we're hopeful as you are, George. So thank you.
Any luck on Pobby?
No, I couldn't find it. I can't go up there. I don't know why we're restricted and how far we can go. It makes no sense.
It's irritating, but so many cool features with what the service we use for streaming, but sometimes it is a little prohibitive. Pobby, top rope, amazing, just unbelievable generosity. Just thank you so much. We call her the princess of MHH here for a reason, and you guys can see this. She says, "Great job on Kelberman's Corner, Zach. Thank you for the energy you bring. You make it so fun, entertaining, and informative. Enjoyed very much. I truly appreciate you guys, like everybody in the MHH community. Love that. Really, really appreciate you, Pobby." And you can't really see it because I got the banner up behind me, but she sent a little care package to everybody for Christmas here at MHH, and it included some cool little keepsakes.
That's awesome.
And a couple for me anyway. I ended up holding on to 2 blankets. Don't tell anybody. But she made them herself, these Bronco blankets, and my daughter uses it every single day. My wife, she's pregnant right now. She's constantly cold, right? And I guess it's winter in the Rockies, so that makes sense. But also because she's pregnant, she's constantly cold. She just walks around all day in that what you made, Bobby, and sent to us. So it's getting utilized here at Clan Jensen, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, it's actually on my bed right now too. I have the blanket. It's amazing. It's so, I don't know. I was so touched by it, Bobby. It's the generosity and the thought and the effort and the intention you put into that. I want to try to get it displayed behind me. I can configure the banner on the shelf, but I actually have some of the other things you sent as well. And you are so supportive and so amazing. We definitely thank you. It was great seeing you in the chat for the Kelberman's Corner, and, listen to her, guys. It's a fun segment. We're going to bring it every week. We're only getting better. This was just the start, so a lot more fun to come.
And a lot more shows and different content. So 2021, we are really exploring I shouldn't say exploring. We're going to pedal to the metal, basically, how we approach our video and podcast content. Because, we were made eligible at some point in early 2020 to have also a membership on YouTube, which we have not chosen to do quite yet. Right now, we're focusing that on Facebook, but we have so much cool content coming down the pike this year for YouTube, for Facebook, of course, everything we're doing at milehighhuddle.com. And guys, we're just so stoked to have you with us. Muhammad, MHH male model. I can't show his picture because the chat, you guys know the story here, but love you, buddy. He says, hello, superstars, and hello to you. Also, he was in the
Yes.
He's a superstar who went over to Facebook to become a supporter. So shout out to you, Muhammad, for being there for Kelberman's Corner debut.
And thank you. You kind of tagged the subtitle to the segment, which is #Dragon. So thank you, Muhammad. We appreciate you.
That's right. Moreno Silva, a name, Zach, we don't recognize on Super Chat.
From Brazil. Wow. Welcome.
Very cool. This is another example of how Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a state of being, baby.
That's
so
right.
Welcome, Moreno. Hope to see you around. And make sure you connect with us on Twitter so that we can shout you out after tonight's show. But Moreno says, shout out from Brazil, guys. Love to watch your shows. Let's hire Fontenot and bring the Lombardi Trophy once more to Denver. #Go Broncos. So we have another, I guess, fan of Terry Fontenot. We're sharing a brain, Moreno.
And I want to know, guys, it's be interesting. Let us know in the comment section what your candidate, your preference is. Who do you want to get the job? Do you want Peyton? Do you want Champ Kelly? Do you want Fontenot? Let us know. We'd love to hear that as well. But Chad, the good thing about Fontenot, at least in my opinion, my not so humble opinion, I think he is the guy that can transform the Broncos in one offseason. Not to maybe make them a title contender, but I think with the right moves in place, they can be in the playoffs next season with the right leadership, starting with him.
If I'm the Broncos, I'm willing to make that sacrifice of having to wait a little bit longer to land Fontenot because, I mean, it's not just his own personal resume in terms of, his road and path through the NFL and his education in terms of, as we talked about last week, he was a guy the Saints sent to the Stanford Business School that they do in tandem. They team up with the NFL for this business school. All that's really cool. But what makes it above and beyond the selling point here, Zach, is he's been in the belly of the beast, so to speak, in one of the most coveted, dominant teams in the league the last 3 years, and that's the New Orleans Saints. Yes, you are, but you get a lot of benefit from having a future Hall of Fame quarterback under center in Drew Brees, and that carries a lot of water for you as an organization, but look at that roster. I mean, as I was watching the game today, Saints-Bears, I want to say it was Tony Romo doing the color commentary who said something to the effect of the Saints have the deepest roster in the NFL. Maybe the only team that could match them are the Kansas City Chiefs. And, it's true. It's true. That's the standard in the NFC as the Chiefs are the standard in the AFC. Why wouldn't you want that?
I mean, and who was a catalyst in the Saints win today, as he always is every single week, and that's Alvin Kamara. And they got him, Chad, number 67 overall, and what was one of the best draft classes. Anyone who has 2 seconds after this podcast, look up the 2017 Saints draft class and be blown away. And compare that to Denver's, Chad, which is one of the all-time worst, and the dichotomy there is, startling.
Grabbed this from Mohammed, who jumped back in there. Now we can actually see his profile pic, and you can all see now why we call him the MHH male model, rocking the trucker hat and the hoodie like a boss. He says, everyone, do yourself a favor, go become an MHH Facebook supporter. Zach, Kelberman's Corner of the show is really good. Come on, go to Facebook now, become a member. I promise you won't regret it. #Dragon. Love it, dude. Love it. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Mo.
That. Albert, one of our supporters on Facebook, also jumps over and super chats too. Just an absolute stud. He says, at least Garrett Bowles. This is something you and I have not addressed yet on camera, on mic. At least Garrett Bowles got selected for the All-Pro. So it was All-Pro selection, second team. Instead of course, he was snubbed for the Pro Bowl, but at least he got second team All-Pro, some recognition. And so, word came down. What was it, Friday or Saturday? I want to say it was Friday. Garrett Bowles was named second team All-Pro at left tackle. Only Green Bay's David Bakhtiari received more votes from the AP for the All-Pro. So similar to Justin Simmons last year, you don't see it too often, but it happens. Snubbed for the Pro Bowl, but gets the AP second team All-Pro. So I was just really stoked. That was the perfect way to, really the perfect way to punctuate or recognize the season Bowles had was that raise he got, right? The extension, but just so cool to see him get that recognition.
It's wild to say, and very well deserved, but wild to say. all-pro Garrett Bowles. Mm-hmm. And we can say that now, and he deserves every bit of the praise coming to him. But didn't Bakhtiari didn't he tear his ACL? Am I mistaken with that? Wasn't he out for the season? And so maybe he got snubbed, you can argue, for all-pro as well. I mean, Garrett Bowles was arguably the best tackle and left tackle, perhaps, in the NFL this season.
Let me see here. I know he was...
Yeah, they're saying in the comments, I believe he had ACL surgery.
Yeah. So, either way, I mean, I was hoping that maybe Bryce Callahan would get a flyer as an all-pro because he had that kind of a season. But
he would have. Yeah, if he stayed healthy.
Yeah, exactly. You got to stay on the field. Kenneth, good to see you again, my friend. Thank you. Chad and Zach, what do you think of Fant and Pitts?
Sounds like a buddy cop show.
It does. Well, Noah Fant, or we talk obviously, and Pitts.
The tight end.
Oh, yeah. From Florida. The John Mackey Award winner, of course. Yeah. You know, I am my vision on football during the football season was 100% narrow on covering your Denver Broncos and the NFL at large. I'm only now just getting to watching some of these prospects, but he's a really good player. I mean, he's a stud. Could he become the next Fant or a player like Fant? I think he's got that in him. But Fant is a guy that, man, he was so underutilized this year in terms of just scratching the surface on what he could be. Had a very productive, very, very productive second year. But imagine what he could have done in a system in which his offensive coordinator focused on him, featured him, prioritized him a little bit more. And he just had more stable quarterback play. It's going to be fun to see because I think even though I was tapping Fant to be the guy to have that Cortland Sutton-esque quantum leap in year 2, I think that quantum leap is going to come in year 3 for Noah Fant, and it's going to be something to behold.
Right there with you. I think he will be a Pro Bowler next year, and he has, perennial All-Pro, Pro Bowl, if not All-Pro upside. And Kenneth, if you're asking about the Broncos drafting Pitts, I mean, that'd be great. I mean, it'd be great in Madden, but they have a first-round tight end. They have Alberto, who's like a lesser version of Pitts. I mean, he can be that Hernandez to the Gronkowski. They're set there. They have Fumagalli, who played well. They can bring him back if they want. They're set at tight end. Great dream scenario. Not going to happen in reality.
I was just about, and thank you for the super, Kenneth. Love you, buddy. I was just about to click on Zachary and the stream. Oh, I still got him. Awesome. Good to see you, my friend. Another one of our Mount Rushmore superstars. He's there right now. And you can see him in his YouTube profile pic, rocking the very MHH State of Being t-shirt that he designed himself that sold very well on huddleuppod.com in 2020. Great job on that, my friend. We appreciate everything you do for this community and your support. He says, I wish Oliver Luck would have thrown a chance in the hat, then make Andrew Luck as the QB coach. Shula first 1A, Shermer 1B OC. Yeah, I know we got a question about Oliver Luck.
Yeah, I was thinking of that
guy on Thursday. So maybe it was Zachary, but I don't remember who floated that idea last
I don't think
week.
It was.
But yeah, Oliver Luck, not in the cards.
Yeah, neither is Andrew Luck. But you know what, Chad? What the Broncos should do is, move on from maybe Mike Shula as the quarterback's coach and bring back Rich Scangarello, who's not coming back to Philadelphia. They let him go after 1 year. Him as the quarterback's coach with Drew Lock, I think, is a match made in heaven. So not going to happen either, but fun to talk about.
All right, we got Mike Evans. So many of our great superstars. In fact, we were just talking about this right before we went live. Sorry, I got to derail the content just for a second here because Mike inspires this in me. But Zach and I were, we update the ticker you see below. We update those names after each and every week on the podcast. And we're just marveling at the number of people who have been with us for a long time, combined with those who are newcomers and getting more active with the show and more active on Super Chat and just pinching ourselves at how lucky we are. And Mike Evans is one of those guys that just makes us realize how fortunate we are to have the community that we do and the platform and the reach that we do. Love you, Mike. In fact, we should get you on the show. We should get you on the show this week, maybe. I don't know what you got going on Wednesday or maybe even Thursday, but holler at us and let us know what your schedule is looking like. But he says, what are the top 3 things we must do in the offseason to move from last to first in the division? Man, that is a macro question right there. I love it. And again, I want to say that Mike and Ron Dubbs Their questions always cut right to the core, always good, make you think, great conversation starters. So top 3 things the Broncos have to do in the offseason to move on or move from last to first. First and foremost, I think you gotta land and the right GM. You got to make the right hire, because if you make the right hire, sorry to use an old Ronald Reagan catchphrase here, but it trickles down to everything, right? It's a trickle down football economics. Let's call it that. However, how the GM goes, so does the team. So make sure you get the right hire. And even though I'd be happy with any of the 3 final candidates in the last stretch here, I just hope they make the right decision. But in terms of personnel decisions and all that, for me, it comes down to, I think you got to resist the temptation to move on from Drew and finish what you started there. Give him one last year as the quarterback, because you could really reap the rewards. It could really pay dividends instead of starting over. Now, I might have a different opinion on that, Zach, if the Broncos were sitting here with a top 5 pick, or even a top 3 pick. I might have a different opinion on that. But sitting there at 9, the odds of them landing, to me, the only guys I would really think twice about replacing Drew Lock with out of this draft day 1 would be obviously Lawrence, but let's just remove him from the equation because he ain't going to be there. I'm not really high on Justin Fields. Star player, really impressive. I'm not a fan of Ohio State quarterbacks, and we get some flack for that, Zach, because it's not fair per se to paint a guy like Justin Fields with the same brush that you would paint some of the busted Ohio State guys like Dwayne Haskins. But Google it, gang. There is not one successful quarterback in the league that's come from Ohio State. That frightens me. So for me, it's putting Lawrence aside. It's Zach Wilson, really. Zach Wilson and Trey Lance has some juice, but maybe he's a guy I would consider if you wanted to move back a little bit at pick 9. That would be a little too rich for me. So stay with Drew, re-sign Justin Simmons. Re-sign Justin Simmons and get the best cornerback you possibly can in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I was going to say I'm obviously in agreement with you about Locke, but I was going to say rally around the quarterback, no matter who that may be. And if Fontenot, let's say, comes in, or Champ Kelly comes in, and he has autonomy, like Elway's saying he does, and he has final say, if he thinks there's a better quarterback out there, whether it be a trade or a free agent or a draft pick, then rally around that guy. Also figure out Von Miller. That is your franchise cornerstone, a future Hall of Famer. You bring him back, you getting rid of him, or you asking him for a pay reduction. You got to get that settled. He's an integral part of the defense. You nailed it with, I would say also, just to differ from your answer, to cut the dead weight. And not only on the roster, Boye, you can talk about Jarrell Casey, but also the coaching staff. Might not happen, but I'm still firing Tom McMahon. There are better special teams coordinators out there, and he, to me, is part of the dead weight. You have to make the entire team better, from the coaching staff to the personnel, and hold people accountable for how bad last year was. That's why I want a guy who has no Broncos ties and no inclination to side with Elway's mindset.
Appreciate that question, Mike. Jay Walsh wants to know, when is the mock draft episode 1? So what we've done traditionally is we hold right before the draft, we hold the big roundtable mock draft. And you guys, I think last year was the first year, Zach, we did it as a live show. Every time before that, we had done it as a pre-recorded episode. And so that won't change. We're going to do that, in the week leading up to the actual draft. But we are going to prioritize and make draft coverage much more of our focus on the pods and the video side in 2021. And that starts with on January 22nd, all right, which is, the Friday before the Senior Bowl week. We're going to hold our 2021 NFL draft primer. We're going to have all the draft guys on the show. Zach and I will kind of be, the host to keep things rolling, and it's going to be really fun. And the whole point of that is to basically kind of put the community and the audience through a kind of orientation, because, maybe on Tuesdays you listen to Nick and Carl, or on Fridays, Eric and Lance, or Luke and Nick on Saturdays, and you hear them throw out some names here and there, and, you hear them, it's hard to latch on. And if you're not a big college football viewer during the season, it's hard to really know who some of these names are. Most fans, I would say, the majority, Zach, they don't really start getting comfortable with who the players are, with who the names are, until maybe right before the draft. And then, so what we want to do is improve your offseason with regard to your draft coverage enjoyment, and we're going to do that with our primer on January 22nd. So we'll see. I mean, we can do some mock drafts on this show. We can have some fun with it, and every show can do their own thing. But our big roundtable, that won't be till right before the draft.
Yeah, and that's always fun. I mean, I know last year's was definitely fun, and what Nick and Luke and Carl and Eric and everyone brings to the table in terms of the draft coverage is superb. So I'm looking forward to it as well to improve my draft knowledge. So very, very soon.
Appreciate you, Christy. And again, we're on the draft side of things. We are just getting started, Zach and I. So as we get a little bit farther into the off season, we get up through this GM thing, because we've been mostly focused on the GM search in terms of our job covering the news and these pods and whatnot. Once we get through that, we're going to dive headlong into the class, and we'll have a lot more to be able to tell you and say about each and every prospect. Based Gase, good to see you, brother. He says, any red flags on Fontenot, considering the Saints are in cap hell? I can honestly, nothing yet on Terry Fontenot has jumped out to me as being a big concern. I'm going to pull up his res again, but Zach, that's an issue, because his focus is on the pro side, the whole cap issue that the Saints have. But to me, it's not a deal breaker in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, is he the cap guy? I mean, was Elway being blamed, or was, Rich Hurtado or Sullivan, was he getting the onus on that because he negotiated contracts? I mean, he gives his recommendations, and he, suggests maybe highly priced players or players that can hurt the salary cap. But ultimately, that's more on Loomis and the cap guy, I feel like, to put the team in that situation.
For those of you who missed it last week, I just want to read this section real quick. It's a couple of quick, short paragraphs. Starting right here, Fontenot has held multiple positions in the Saints scouting department, including as a pro scouting assistant, where he helped evaluate free agents, track player movement, studied film, and aided in the planning for the NFL draft, and as an assistant in player personnel, which encompasses the whole ball of wax, college and pro side. In 2012, he was selected by the Saints to attend the Stanford Business School Executive Education NFL Stanford Program for Managers. That's a mouthful. An education program and honor known across the league as an important training ground for promising executives. So there's a lot to like about this guy, former player himself. And so is Champ Kelly, for what it's worth. Champ Kelly never really made it into the league and didn't, have a very decorated college career. But I'm leaning still toward Fontenot. No red flags up to this point.
I just went on over the cap, and the Saints in 2022 are projected to have $55.5 million in salary cap space. So is that salary cap hell? I would argue that it's more like, temporary purgatory, but I digress.
We just crossed the 1 hour mark, so we got to rapid fire through our remaining superstars here. Mahesh, though, wants to know if MHH has an app. Not right now, but on the network side with Sports Illustrated and Fan Nation, there might be something coming down the pike in the near future, but it's nothing to write home about quite yet. Anything on that side of things is very much in process. Mark Anthony, again, appreciate you, bro. He says, Watson looked really unhappy. Deshaun Watson looking really unhappy in Houston. Possible trade looking real. Latest price, guess, surprisingly low. I'd rather trade for Watson, or would you rather trade for Watson or trade up for a Zach Wilson? In that scenario, it would come down to cost. In a perfect world, I'd rather take Deshaun Watson over a Zach Wilson if we're moving on from Drew Lock. But Zach, what is the latest you've heard on the whole Deshaun Watson front? Because I know you had that article on Saturday, the speculative article from Bleacher Report that really caught fire. It was one of the most viral articles of 2021 so far for MHH.
Yeah, Bleacher suggested the Broncos send a trade package for Deshaun Watson, including Drew Lock, a first-round pick this year or next year, and a second-round pick this year, which is not going to be enough anyway. That's just their opinion, their speculation. But the latest rumor, guys, is supposedly, based on, I think Chris Mortensen reported this, Deshaun Watson to Miami for a package that includes Tua, who would go to Houston. So that's the latest rumor and conjecture. He has a no-trade clause, and he's unhappy with the owner. They still haven't spoken. He was kept out of the GM hiring loop and really has some dismay with the organization. I still don't think he gets traded, Chad. The contract, the draft capital it would take to acquire him, and Houston would be so freaking dumb to trade him in his prime right now. I don't think he's coming to the Broncos, but that's the latest scuttlebutt. Miami supposedly has a shot.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't read that article, I'm sure the vast majority of you have. Go check it out over at milehighhuddle.com. It's very, very intriguing. But again, I mean, everyone I've talked to in Houston, a couple of guys that I know through the Pro Football Writers of America brotherhood, for lack of a better term, they're saying that there's no way on God's green earth Watson's getting traded. But, this has now kind of taken on a life of its own in the court of public opinion. And so even though I still would be surprised if it happens, all bets are off, man. Like, he's really pushing the envelope here, Watson.
Is this a semi-hot take to say the Broncos have a more realistic chance to trade up for Trevor Lawrence than they do Deshaun Watson? I mean, just the capital it would take to acquire an established top 5 quarterback in his prime. I understand the Texans' history, Chad, but Bill O'Brien's not there anymore. And if Nick Caserio has any common sense whatsoever, even coming from the Bill Belichickian dynasty, he has to keep a cornerstone like Deshaun Watson. Trade J.J. Watt if you must, but you got to keep Deshaun.
All right, guys, last one here from Muhammad, jumping in again with a super sticker. Man, thank you, my friend. Your support just blows us away because it's not just on the live streams and on Super Chat, but you're rocking the gear. You're becoming a Facebook supporter. So it all means the world to us, my friend. And just know we really appreciate that.
Yes.
Jerry, also one of our supporters who was in on Kelberman's Corner today. It was good to see you, Jerry.
Thank you.
His point here is when you look at NFL talent defenses compared to college, do you really think Zach Wilson looks that great? Zach Wilson, to me, is a very intriguing quarterback. I mean, there's a lot about him I do like, but he also, to me, is a player that is coming out of college, coming out of BYU, so similar to Drew Lock coming out of Mizzou. Like a lot of similarities. Probably a better, smoother passer. Probably similar athleticism, but still very much, and actually less proven than Locke. Locke was a 4-year starter at Missouri because remember when Rich Scangarello, Zach, I know we need to get off here, but when Rich Scangarello was here and the Broncos drafted Locke and then also signed Brett Rippon as a college free agent, the selling point for him and what made him gravitate towards those two quarterbacks was a 4-year body of work with which to evaluate, analyze the player, and then have a more firm and stable foundation with which to project what they might be able to do in the league. Zach Wilson, to me, is still very unproven in that sense, doesn't have the same resume.
I mean, well, first of all, obviously we can't see a college prospect against an NFL defense. We only can evaluate him based on college opponents. This is why the draft, Chad, is the ultimate crapshoot. If we had film like that, there'd be no bust, certainly no quarterback bust. But if you watch Wilson, no matter the game, the situation, his poise and his comfortability in the pocket, Chad, and his anticipation, as Dylan says, and I got to give Justin Herbert this. I was not high on him at all, and I'll eat some crow on him. If you watch him, he didn't look like a rookie this year. He is so comfortable leading the huddle, behind the pocket, operating within the pocket, and Zach Wilson, as a runner, as a passer, he really is, I think, the total package. And for my money, it might be another hot take, he's not that far from Trevor Lawrence as the quarterback, too, in this draft class.
All right, guys, we got to get out of here. So thanks to each and every one of you for spending some time with us here tonight. We appreciate all of you. And a mile-high salute to our Super Chat superstars and those of you who signed up on Facebook to become official supporters, those of you who are given stars tonight. We just appreciate each one of you more than we can say. And it's one more time, before we do get on out of here, you want to head over to Mile High Huddle's Facebook page. It's right there is the link, but everyone has Facebook for the most part on their phones. So just open up Facebook, search Mile High Huddle. You'll see our page, and I'm sure the vast majority of you are already following the page or liking the page. But if you want to take the additional step to become a supporter here, you'll be in like Flynn on episode 2 of Kelberman's Corner next Sunday at noon with Kim Becker. And again, it's a little bit different flavor. I shouldn't say a little bit. It's a lot different flavor than what we do on these live streams. They're more long form, open issue, taking questions the whole time. Basically, it's a little bit different. And our catchphrase we landed on that really seemed to make the most sense was hot takes that hold water. So that's how you get in on that. And again, it all, it supports what we're doing here and allows us to, have the means to focus more and more of our time and energy into content specifically for you as our supporter. So check that out. And I got to agree with everybody, Zach. Great job today. And, we weren't sure what to expect because, Kim is great. Zach is great, but never really spent much time on camera, on mic together like this. So when it comes to chemistry and flow, you never know how things are going to turn out. And I thought you guys both hit it out of the park.
I appreciate it. And, like you said, Chad, like we said on the show itself, we have so many more ideas coming. This was the pilot. And for anyone who watches, programs or shows, the pilot is traditionally the worst episode of every show. So I thought it was a good episode, but that was the worst that we're going to crank out. It's only going to get better. We're going to make it more streamlined. We'll get a certain time down. We apologize for the difficulties, Chad, but I'm looking forward to connecting and giving back to you guys who've given back to us for so many years now and so many weeks now. We appreciate you, and this is just the start. Like you said earlier, we are just scratching the surface.
And by the way, the technical difficulties side that delayed us, that was my fault. That wasn't on Zach and Kim. So anyway, appreciate each and every one of you. Also, make sure you follow the main account on Twitter at HuddleUpPod and at Mile High Huddle, those two accounts. My partner, Zack Kelberman, at Kelberman NFL. At Chad and Jensen. If you're one of our newer Super Chat superstars, maybe you just debuted today, reach out, connect with us. We will follow back. We'd like to be able to shout out each and every superstar after each show on Twitter. So feel free to do that. And we'll see you here tomorrow night, same time, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. We might be a few minutes past the top of the hour, but that's kind of how we roll. But 6 to 7 Mountain, 8 to 9 Eastern. And Zach, have a great start to your week, my friend, and sign us off.
I'm going to just say this was the first Sunday without Broncos football, and God, I miss those stupid idiots. Don't you, Chad? I mean, win or lose, no matter how frustrating they can be, it's just not the same without Broncos football, but a lot to dive into. We'll be back tomorrow night. We'll maybe have some more news on the GM front. We're getting close to hiring, guys. I believe Ziegler pulling out was an indication the Broncos have their guy. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you then. And as always, go Broncos.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.